Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Babla Jonathan. In our top stories in this edition of the news, several parts of the crisis hit northwest regional capital, Bamenda, were paralyzed today from the commercial hub to some remote parts of the town. Streets were deserted as forces of law and order intensify efforts to track down suspected criminals. Ayapol Abini, a legal mind and former Supreme Court magistrate in the Republic of Cameroon, condemns recent decision by some administrative authorities banning public demonstrations in several parts of the country. He says it's a violation of the people's rights. Those were our top stories. Once more, thank you for joining us on this edition of the news on Equinoxe television. And we're beginning right away in the northwest regional capital, Bamenda. Several parts of the town were paralyzed today. Life was brought to a near halt in the several parts of the town within the context of the deepening socio-political and security tensions hitting the two English-speaking regions of the Republic of Cameroon. Several parts of the town were void of inhabitants on the streets, from the commercial hub, the commercial avenue area of the town, to some remote parts of Bamenda, like Street, Commercial Avenue, of course, Bamenda main market, even the food market and Tarikon were simply deserted. Inhabitants were not seen on the streets except at the Tarikon market, where some inhabitants were seen selling and buying in that market. And this is at the time when forces of law and order intensify efforts to track down suspected criminals within the context of the deepening socio-political and security tensions in that part of the country. Over the weekend, some persons were killed in the northwest region of the country as the crisis continues deepening further, while the government in all its arms, administrative authorities on the ground, the military forces of law and order are stepping up efforts to restore normalcy in those two regions hit by socio-political and security tensions for close to 4 years today. And within the framework of the deepening crisis, the senior divisional officer of the Mezam division has put a ban on the public demonstrations, and this is within the context of efforts by the governments to restore peace and normalcy in those in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And other administrative authorities have also taken similar decisions in different parts of the country, including the governor of the littoral region of the country banning unauthorized or undeclared public manifestations ahead of the planned 22nd September 2020 public manifestation by militants of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement (CRM) political party, which is inviting all other Cameroonians to rise up and bring down the current regime, because according to them, the regime has failed to solve the multiple problems plaguing the country. And Justice Ayapol Abini, former Supreme Court magistrate in Cameroon, has condemned the decision taken by some administrative authorities banning public demonstrations, in some cases undeclared public demonstrations. To him, it is a violation of the people's rights. And he was speaking today in Boya on the occasion of the celebration of the 2020 World Democracy Day. He was speaking in a ceremony organized by the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa in the town of Boya. Now take a listen to Ayapol Abini.
The advent of multi-party politics in Cameroon, and 30 years after, multi-party politics have died completely. If you look at what's happening right now, even as we are gathered here, communiques are being published imposing states of emergency, and these things are done by administrators. By the Constitution of Cameroon, only the President of the Republic has the power, the prerogative, to impose a state, to declare a state of emergency by a presidential decree. An administrator has the power to ban a particular meeting from holding, a particular march from taking place. But there is no enabling instrument, to the best of my knowledge, no legal enabling instrument which empowers an administrator to impose a state of emergency. Because the moment you make a general communique that no gathering should take place, you are transformed the society into a state of emergency. This is the sole prerogative of the President of the Republic according to our Constitution. That was the essence of
but they will tell you that it's for the safety of the nation and its citizens.
The President of the Republic has the primary duty to ensure the safety of the country. If he sees that that safety is threatened, he declares a state of emergency. As I've said, we are governed by the law. All conduct is governed by the law. And there is no law that gives that right to any other person than the President of the Republic. And I've gone through the Constitution a number of times. I've not seen any suggestion that the President of the Republic can delegate that power. He does it himself and ends there.
So what should Cameroonians do in this context?
No, I cannot advise them on what to do. As a lawyer, I am just saying that all the communiques published are illegalities. They don't conform to the law of this country.
Anybody has any clarification?
Justice Paul Abine speaking there to ETV's Derek Jato in the Southwest Regional Chieftain Boya, and a statement of the United Nations Organization indicates that this edition of the World Democracy Day is a spotlight on democracy and the unprecedented COVID-19 crisis, which has resulted in major social, political, and legal challenges globally, and as states around the world adopt emergency measures to address the crisis, it is critical that they continue to uphold the rule of law, protect and respect international standards and basic principles of legality and the right to access justice, remedies and due process. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged governments to be transparent, responsive and accountable in the COVID-19 response, and to ensure that any emergency measures are legal, proportionate, necessary and non-discriminatory. On to something else now. Over 500 liters of illicit fuel has been intercepted by elements of the mobile intervention unit of the police force in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. The sale of illicit fuel is said to be growing in major cities in Cameroon, and dealers say it is imported from Nigeria. We have details in this report compiled by Fomi Armstrong Sander.
A private vehicle transformed into a fuel tank.
C'est la Sonara.
The driver, who is the owner of the vehicle, explains that the technical work, the adaptation process, was done in Bonaberry in the Douala 4 subdivision.
I wanted to do business. That come upon me that I get into it, so that is it.
A technical innovation, one would say, but their objective was not to show their technical skills, but to outsmart elements of the forces of law and order, as their vehicle is specialized in the transportation of illicit fuel sold in Limbe in the Fako division of the Southwest region.
Oh, so Limbe. So I saw in Nigeria. No, it's my own knowledge now. I have no reason in doing that, but it's my own knowledge.
The contraband fuel, according to the dealer, comes in from the neighboring Federal Republic of Nigeria through Limbe, where he and others in his line of business distribute to the other parts of the country. It was in one of such distribution process when he was caught with over 500 liters by elements of the Mobile Intervention Unit number 2 in Douala. The seizure took place at one of our control posts at Bekoko. Following our secret information sources, we were able to intercept this vehicle, which at first sight presents nothing suspicious. The forces of law and order, in collaboration with the Littoral Regional Delegation, are in an operation to fish out illicit fuel dealers. We are asking the population to be very vigilant when they want to travel on the Douala Southwest and the Douala Mongo stretches to the traffickers. We want them to know that we shall continue hunting them, and whenever they are caught, their products will be destroyed or auctioned if they are of good quality. The dealer and his vehicle will be handed over to the governor of the littoral region. The retail of illicit fuel has become the new normal in Cameroon's major cities, including Douala, and officials want the population to collaborate in order to end the activity, which they qualify as a public danger.
To Kribi in the south region of the Republic of Cameroon, and we're going to be talking about the problem of bad roads affecting Cameroon from the big cities to the hinterlands. It's a major problem that is making life quite difficult for inhabitants and slowing down economic activities. The journey from Kribi to Akak via Campo in the Ocean Division is more or less an uphill task, quite a difficult journey because of the bad state of the road, especially during this period of the rainy season. And the journey that used to last 6 hours now takes a whole day and even more. Details with Innocent.
Equinoxe team en route to Akak via Campo in the south region. Aware of the great obstacles awaiting us, we decided to get a four-wheel drive vehicle adapted to vanquish the obstacles. Unfortunately, the monster stretch of road whose state has been worsened by frequent rainfall unfriends with this sophisticated vehicle. The Ocean Division laments most the 30-kilometer stretch linking Kribi and Goro, where the deep sea port is planted, is well passable. Some minutes later, the real wrestling began, and we got caged since it just rained, rendering the roads already in a deplorable state impassable. Over 45 kilometers separate us from Campo, of which you are to add the remaining 30 kilometers to cover between Campo and Akak, our start point. The journey was estimated to last 6 hours, excluding the time wasted on this unbearable road. The first and one of the most dangerous awaits us ahead in Balambala village. A veritable nightmare, imposing gymnastics for vehicles and bikes daring this route, but unfortunately end up in a garage after leaving this den. This is just the beginning of our suffering, as another monster found in a Soke village awaits us with smile. We have wasted more than 30 minutes with all of our energy and that of locals before succeeding to challenge this stage. We came out from this dungeon to enter another type. Yesterday, I went to see my sick cousin in Campo. Like seriously, the road is more than that, leading to hell. I fell twice in the night. I am from Yaoundé and returning to Kribi. I wish locals of this village could be blessed with a passable road. You are compelled to remove your shoes and synergistically push this bike or vehicle out of here. We have not covered half of our journey from Campo. We have spent over an hour on the same spot. I have the impression that hellfire is right ahead of us. A 6-hour journey, but we are still a stone throw from our take point, with about 40 kilometers still to be covered before arriving Akak. Upon arriving this forest zone, our destiny is determined by this stocked truck transporting timber. Ill luck for us as we bumped on this truck that has blocked the roads about 10 kilometers to Akak. Now it is impossible for us to continue the journey with our vehicle, since we are told the truck will only be put out of here the next day. The only option for us is to abandon our vehicle in the good hands of the driver and hunt for motorbikes to reach Akak. Being a fortunate day for us, we came across youths of this locality at 7 p.m. who voluntarily accepted to take us to Akak on foot due to scarcity of motorbikes. We left Kribi at 8:30 a.m. but arrived Akak at about 8 p.m. Returning to Kribi. It was certain we will undergo same stressful journey with the same obstacles and consequences. Here on our way back, it is a truck that is stuck, blocking the route. We are attempting to forcefully pass at the corner, but unfortunately, we missed the track. Patience is required and energy galvanized to move out of here. In a nutshell, it is a veritable nightmare the population have on daily basis, using this stretch of roads administrative authorities peep with an eye.
Thanks, Inosenazi, Maseren Gansop, and Rodrigue Ngassi for that in-depth report on the situation of that stretch of road in Kribi in the Ocean Division, South region of the Republic of Cameroon. In the report coming up next, Immaculate Fogui takes a look at the skyrocketing prices of tomatoes in some parts of the country, and a kissing point in this newscast takes us to Lum in the Mongo Division, littoral region of Cameroon.
A commodity which was in abundance few months ago in markets in Cameroon and begging for buyers has now become scarce, resulting to price hike. A basket of tomatoes which used to cost 2,500 francs is now sold at 12,000 francs. We used to sell 4 medium tomatoes for 100 francs, but now we sell 1 for 100 francs. We no longer sell tomatoes for 50 francs. Even with 5,000 francs, one is unable to cook a reasonable pot of tomato sauce. Things have become very difficult. Consumers in Lum think that things would have been different if the tomato factory in Nun Division was still operational. If the tomato transformation company in Lum was operational, we wouldn't have been suffering now. If that was the case, we would have been depending on our reserves. This morning, I sent my wife to the market and she was unable to buy a reasonable quantity of tomatoes. The government cares less of the plight of the population.
200 sur le marché, 3 tomates, 200, vraiment.
Tomato farmers in Cameroon a few months back incurred enormous losses as supply exceeded demand, resulting to a drastic drop in prices and eventually crippling the sector. The hike in price, which now favors the farmers, is rather putting buyers on a hot seat, as many of them are now unable to make ends meet.
Out of Cameroon, authorities in Mozambique have promised to investigate a video showing people dressed in army uniforms beating and killing a naked woman in the restive gas-rich Cabo Delgado province, and the defense ministry condemned the footage as horrifying and vowed to ascertain their authenticity. Rights groups have also condemned the killing. Mozambique has been battling an Islamist militant group in the north for 3 years today. Its army has been accused of human rights abuses as it tries to put down the insurgency. The government denies the accusations. Talking Point is up next. Thank you for staying with us in Talking Points. Today we are receiving a human rights officer of the the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have me.
All right, and today we are on the World Democracy Day, and today you organized something in Buea. What was it all about? Agbo, Eno Bachem Agbo. What was it all about?
Yes, we had a panel discussion in Buea, which was organized by CHADA, which we brought together stakeholders in the sphere of democracy. To the theme, the contextualized theme which we worked on was enhancing the role of stakeholders for an effective democracy in Cameroon. That may be like a little bit shift from the UN theme, but we are contextualizing it, looking at the fact that that is what is more necessary for us now in our country. We need to encourage stakeholders. We need to remind them of their parts to play to promote democracy in our country. And we brought stakeholders, we brought resource persons from the youth perspective, we brought from the media perspective, we brought even from the political perspective, as well as women and communication, because all these facets put together will boost a good democratic system.
And let me ask you this, you're coming from Buea. In this newscast we saw images from Bamenda, and several parts of the town were paralyzed. Life was brought to a near halt in several parts of the town, Commercial Avenue, Chair Street, and even the main market, the food market, and other places. What about Buea? What's the situation there?
I can say in Buea we can be very grateful to God, because Buea for a while now has been quite peaceful. We've not had the rampant shooting and killing, and that's the situation in Buea. We pray that it continues.
Okay, we pray that it continues. It's everybody's prayer, I believe so.
Yes, sure.
Now, talking about democracy, you are the governance officer of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa. The move, the democratic evolution of Cameroon has been going on for more than 50 years since the country gained independence. What do you think about this, the democratic situation of Cameroon today?
I will not want to really take us right to 50 years, but I will want to take us 30 years in terms of multi-partyism. I can say that is when Cameroon really started practicing what is called democracy per se. And in 1990, when multi-partyism was put in place in Cameroon, we can see that there was a strong opposition. There was a strong opposition at the time. In 1992, that was when oppositions really had power in Cameroon, as can be seen in their results of parliament. They had the highest number of parliamentarians at the time. But since after then, opposition in Cameroon has been in the backbench. So we can say that democracy, that is why you hear Cameroonians who say they don't practice democracy. Democracy is just on paper, democracy is not practiced. This is because the opposition and all other stakeholders in the democratic process or in the democratic system have not been actively involved. We're talking of the youth, we talk of the women, we talk of the media. Look at the youths. Most of the youths in Cameroon, they shy away from anything. Let's say the basic of any democracy is election. But youths shy away from election because they think that it is a thing for the old. Nonetheless, it's their fundamental right to decide whether to vote or not. But the reason why they are not voting is because they think that their votes do not count. And for the women, look at our Senate, look at the parliament, look at even the councils, and even the cabinet, the ministers. Very few women are represented. Is it that women cannot handle these positions? Of course they can. Women can.
You're talking about voter apathy. What accounts for this? Is it just because they think that their votes will not count, or there is another thing that provokes that kind of mindset?
There is, and the thing that provokes that mindset is lack of accountability. The elected officials so far have proven that they are not accountable to their voters. Prior to the votes, they come and promise heaven and earth, and after the votes, heaven and earth becomes hell. That is why the citizens, the women, the youths have discovered that there is no need going into this thing. It's better they just stay at the background and watch the way the scenes unfold, because their voices are not heard. Rather, the youths with the majority and the women with their majority population, they can bring about change, but they stay back because they feel like it does not matter. So there is no accountability. The elected officials do not give accounts to their voters. There is this system of, in Africa, in Cameroon in particular, we believe in young votes, old officials. Young voters, old officials. Why is it that at the age of 20, a Cameroonian can vote, but at the age of 20, they cannot run in for elections, for any position? This is because we believe that youths, their votes matter because of their majority, and of course, their votes at the age of 20 is a very
take stock of a situation that occurred there after flooding and so on. What do you make of all these efforts that they are putting together to better the living conditions of Cameroonians?
Mr. Babila, I am a realist, and I want to tell you that government is doing good, no doubt, but they ought to do better. What they are doing is beyond expectations. What they are doing is beyond, it's not up to what their voters expect of them.
It's far below expectations.
It's far below expectations. So what they need to do is to step up their game. And that's why I talked of accountability. When they begin giving accounts to their voters or to their citizens, because democracy is all about a government of the people. And who are the people we're talking about? We are looking at the masses. Look at the votes you just showed us there. Are you sure if the denizens of that community are to hear anything about election? Do you think they will believe in their leaders? That is the reason. There is no accountability. Leaders
in this context of no accountability, what you're highlighting as failure of the authorities in power to deliver the goods, the mindset of voter apathy, staying away from politics, staying away from actively taking part in nation building. Is it the right mindset to have, as far as young people in particular are concerned?
It's not the right mindset. Like we started by you asking me of what we had today in Boya, the symposium we organized in Boya. This symposium was geared to change this mindset of youth. It is not a good thing to stay away from what would determine your fate. It is not a good thing to stay away from a process that will determine your fate for a very long period of time. 7 years is a long period of time. 5 years is a long period of time. That is time which can be used to bring about change, desired change. And of course, it is by the youth. If you think that your votes, or talking about the voter apathy, that your votes are not accounted for, then the best thing is to advocate. The youths can advocate. If they feel like, because I've talked with most youths, they're acting like, okay, what's the reason for this maybe 3 years difference? Maybe as you want to run as parliamentarian, the law says you might be, I'm sure, 23 years. But why is it that they allow them to vote at 20 and just give them room to go at 23? It means they believe in their votes and they don't believe in them. So they are just looking at some of these issues and even comparing it to like the situation that was in Nigeria. Let me bring the case of Nigeria. That was in 2017, if I'm not getting it wrong, where youths were on the street protesting in Abuja, and they went to the parliament seeking that their laws of election should be readjusted to favor them, because the age limits were too high and did not grant them opportunities to go into office. And this caused Muhammadu Buhari to endorse what is known as a not too young to run. And this brought down the age limit to in a way. And maybe the case in Cameroon, I can say the ages are not really as high as that in Nigeria, but our youths need to be encouraged. Our youths need to see accountability. They need to see the effects of democracy very, very feasible that is what they don't see, and that is why they don't engage in the process.
In other words, if I get you well, in the meantime, while expecting those changes, the young people have to be active in order to contribute in efforts to bring the necessary changes.
The young people need to be active.
And you were, of course, not only discussing about young people, you were discussing also about other stakeholders.
Yes.
In the event organized by the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Boya today. Other stakeholders like women.
Yes, we talked about the women. We talked about the media. The media in particular, you have a great role. As a media organ, you have a great role. There's no democratic system that is complete without the media, without a free media. And the problem with the media is that there is high level of censorship. When the government begins to censor the media, I mean, when you put an eye too much on a child, that child cannot act efficiently or effectively. There is so much eye on the media, and this makes the media, most of them are very scared on what to report about. They tend to twist things because they are scared of the unknown. So there is need for a free media. There is need for a free media, and of course there is need for a respect for human rights. That's a principle.
Are you saying that the media in Cameroon is stifled? What do you mean by so much eye on the media?
Yeah, the media in Cameroon, in a way, it's not free to function effectively. The media is not free. We cannot say the media is 100% free. There's a tight corner in the media. There are things which journalists in Cameroon cannot report. I know journalists who cover events in Cameroon or carry investigations on issues in Cameroon, but prefer to send the news to foreign media organs. That's because they cannot report it in Cameroon because of the fear of the unknown.
But the authorities that will tell you that the press is very, very free in Cameroon. They will, for example, highlight the factor of multiplicity of television, radio, newspapers, and so on, to say that the press is free. That
all of these media houses, the TV, the multiplicity, like you said, all these organs are just permitted to operate. So they will see Cameroon as a truly democratic system, where there is freedom for people to air their opinions. But you can agree with me that there are journalists who have been arrested because they cover particular events. There are journalists who have been arrested because they report issues that happened. The media is the eye and the ear of the people. They need to be free. There is no need for high censorship. When you put them so much tension, they will not operate effectively.
Even though the Ministry of Defense, for example, and other authorities will say that those who have been arrested committed this crime, collaboration with secessionists and many other charges that are raised by the forces of law and other, or the institutions of law and order and security and so on.
You see, I may not want to oppose maybe the decision or the opinion of the Ministry of Defense. That is because some of these journalists who were arrested and maybe something along the line disappeared, let me say forceful disappearance, we didn't know what happened, and they are giving us this report. This is from the beginning when they were arrested, why didn't they make it clear to the public that this person has been arrested because of this? But rather we find a case where even their human rights were being violated. They are not granted access to their lawyers. It's a fundamental human rights that when you are detained, you should be granted access to a lawyer. That is the person who will follow your case, because while you are in prison, your fate is being determined by that lawyer. But when they are not granted access to their lawyers, what becomes of them? We only get to hear of their obituary, and after they're doing the obituary, or after that, we get cooked up stories which we cannot verify how true they are.
Now there are equally other stakeholders. I want you to come back to the women. You were indicating earlier that they are not very well represented in many of the state institutions.
Yes, women are not very well represented, and there are a good number of reasons why women shy away from being, let me say, why they shy away from these positions. That is because there was a UN report which I cannot really quite pick out a year, I'm sure 2005, that gives out some reasons why women are not fully involved in these politically elected positions, because there is a fear of their threat on their lives, and they fear intimidation and oppression and all of that. But this is not a time for women to yield into these suppressive actions or suppressive ideas or authorities. This is a time for them to step up, because you are the best person who can best advocate for your interests. Women cannot stay in the background and believe that the men in power will best advocate for their interests. They need to be there by themselves. Why channel your issues to a third party? Why not go into it yourself? That is what we are saying to the women. They have a great majority, and we believe that with their majority they can bring about desired changes.
Eno Bachem Abo, Governance Officer of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy. This issue of governance is at the center, according to some analysts, of the situation going on in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. There are lawyers, politicians, notably of the opposition, who think that the problem there is governance. What do you think about that?
I may have to agree that the problem is a problem of governance. It is a problem of governance because, let's look, for instance, we heard that there are some parties that maybe think that there is a need for them to demonstrate on the 22nd of this month of September, because they think there are things which are not going right, and those things need to be addressed. But what do we hear from the government? The government is ready to put in place repressive measures to crack down these protests. That ought not to be the case. It is a fundamental democratic right for people to protest. So you see, that is why people may not be wrong when they say it's an issue of governance, because the governance system, I mean, we don't know if at all we can say that they don't understand what ought to be done, when and how, because it is right. You can only come in when you see that the rights of protest are being violated. Maybe they are causing destructions and all of that, but you have not given room for that, and you are already suppressing the demonstrations. So it is a whole problem of governance. It's a whole problem of governance. It is a fundamental right. I mean, it is stated in a whole plethora of laws. It's stated in a whole, even the I can say Appendix 16, if I'm not mistaken, of the preamble of the 1996 Constitution. Talks of the right to belong to associations, trade unions, free assembly, and the right to strike. So this right to strike, where is it? Is it that we have these rights just on paper? I think the striking is the only way through which people can air their grievances or their dissatisfaction against their leaders.
As an expert in governance, has Cameroon been progressing or regressing as far as governance or democracy is concerned? Have we been moving some steps ahead or backward?
As concerns governance, I would say Cameroon is doing a step ahead, 2 steps back. A step ahead, 2 steps back. Because at a time when we think things are getting better, they will bring us back to say, no, you guys were mistaken. This is not what we are doing. So, in a way, Cameroon is not progressing in terms of democracy. It is moving at a very slow, snail, and unnoticeable pace. Very, very slow. The pace is very slow. Though we are progressing, but it is very slow and very, very unnoticeable.
No, the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa organized a panel discussion today in Boya. Apart from such events organized on special days, so to speak, because today is the World Day of Democracy, what is the center doing to enhance the implementation of democratic principles in Cameroon and in other African countries, especially those countries where dictatorship seems to be dictating its own laws?
You know, when we look at if we want to look at a brief history of this World Democracy Day, I may have to take you back to 1988, when the then Philippine president Corano, I think I lost the other name, was ousted. Replaced his predecessor through what they termed the peaceful power revolution, because his predecessor was called Ferdinand Marcos, was a dictator for 20 years. Has been a dictator for 20 years, and they had to use what they called the peaceful power revolution to oust him from power. So dictatorship and democracy are adversely related. Dictatorship can never exist in a democratic system. Dictatorship already shows that the system is not democratic.
Is there anything like dictatorial democracy?
Yes, I would say there is. There is dictatorial democracy.
Democracy in dictatorship?
Yes, there is democracy in dictatorship. Rather, what happens in such cases is that it appears to be democracy, but beneath the push factor is dictatorship. Like what I said, when people will lobby for your support, and when they get the support, they forget about you. They work by their own rules and what they think is necessary, what they think they want you to do, what they think they want you to have. That is dictatorship. But we use the guise of democracy by saying we had a free and fair election, freely elected leaders. But after election, what's the case? What's the case? Do we still look at our citizens to the face and tell them that this is what you put us to do, this is what we have done? And do we give accounts? There's no accountability, so it becomes dictatorship.
All right, and some political leaders, including Professor Maurice Kamto and, of course, Kabanwala Edith Njang Dennis of the CRM, CPP, PAP, respectively, and others, think that the only way to have democracy in its fullness in Cameroon is to take to the streets and bring down the present regime. What do you think about that? Is that the only way out?
Like I said, it is a fundamental democratic right for people to protest. For that is the only way through which they can air out their grievances. They cannot take guns and start killing or start causing atrocities. But through public demonstrations, that is the only way citizens can say there is a problem. This is a problem. This is what we want. Because that during these demonstrations, you will see people with placards. Those are the words that we use to communicate, because during the protests you may not want to hear what people are saying, but you will look at their placards and you know that this is a problem, this is what they think is wrong, and this is how they want it to be. But how do they do that? They must go to the street. Moving to the street may cause some kind of attention.
All right.
And we call for redress.
Enobachem Agbo, Governance Officer for the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa. Thanks for joining us today.
A pleasure is mine.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.
Sept conseils pour se protéger contre le nouveau coronavirus. 1. Lavez-vous régulièrement les mains à l'eau et au savon ou à l'aide d'un gel hydroalcoolique. 2. Vous ressentez l'envie de tousser ou d'éternuer? Faites-le dans un mouchoir ou dans le creux de votre cou